And of course, you went on to have many more songs like Poor Folks and Tips of My Fingers, 8 by 10. The list just goes on and on. But you were also a part of a hit-making duo with Jan Howard. What prompted you and Jan to start recording together?
Jan became a regular member of my television show. I did a syndicated television show for about 9 years, starting in 1965, and Jan was the female singer on my show from 1967, I think, until 72, something like that. We started singing together a lot on television, and we found that our voices blended pretty well, and people seemed to like it, and they would write in and request duets on the TV show, and it just kind of went from there. Jan was recording for Capitol Records at the time, and I was on Decca, so we couldn't record together. But her contract expired, and she signed with Decca, and it was just kind of an extension of our television show that we started making records together.
And, of course, you had many hits with her, For Loving You, Dissatisfied, and I think you even won Vocal Duo of the Year one year.
Well, we were nominated for it every year, but there was this guy named Porter Wagner with this girl named Dolly Parton.
Dolly.
And then there was this guy named Conway Twitty with this girl named Loretta Lynn. Nearly every year, Bill Anderson and Jan Howard finished either behind Conway and Loretta or behind Porter and Dolly. But we had a wonderful career, had a lot of fun, and had a certain amount of success together.
You know, I think one of my favorite songs that you and Jan recorded was a song titled We. I think it was originally a Statler Brothers tune, wasn't it? But did you write that song?
No, it was written by, I think, Don and Harold Reed of the Statler Brothers. It's one of the wordiest songs I think I ever tried to record. I never did learn it. It had so many words to it. I never did learn it. But it was a fun song to record. Jan and I had a lot of fun recording that together.
I just love that. We walked the warm streets of Florida with sand in our pockets lots of times.
Well, I'm glad you know the words. You'll have to teach them to me.
Only a few of them. So, I guess what year were you inducted into the Grand Ole Opry, Bill?
I joined the Grand Ole Opry in 1961, July of 61, which means this year I'll celebrate my 48th anniversary, Lord willing.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a wonderful, wonderful 48 years. It seems like it was yesterday. Seems like it was just last week or so that I sang at the Opry for the very first time, and it's been great to be a part of that family all these years.
Now, this is my favorite question for a lot of the Opry stars that I've had on my program. Do you remember who inducted you into the Opry? Because about half of the artists that I've had on remember, and about half of them don't.
Well, I remember very well. Billy Grammer. I don't know if you remember Billy Grammer or not. He
Sure.
had a big hit record called Gotta Travel On. He had the original record of Detroit City. And Billy was a regular on the Opry at that point in time, and he was the one that inducted me. But I tell you, back in 1961, they didn't make nearly as big a deal out of joining the Grand Ole Opry as they do today. I mean, today they've got it on television, and they have press conferences, and they blow it out and really make a big deal out of it. I was looking through a scrapbook not long ago, and there was a clipping from the Nashville Banner newspaper said, Bill Anderson became the 61st member of the Grand Ole Opry Saturday night. And that was it. So it wasn't really a very big thing, but I do remember that Billy Grammer's the one that introduced me the night that I joined.
Now, I believe I read a great story that you told in your book, Hope You're Living as High on the Hog as the Pig You Turned Out to Be, about the first time you met Roy Acuff backstage at the Opry, and he was going to introduce you that night. I was wondering, could you tell us that story?
Well, Mr. Roy had been on tour in Australia when I came to Nashville, and I didn't meet him for several months, close to a year, actually. I'd been in Nashville before he and I ever came face-to-face at the Grand Ole Opry, and he was not familiar with me, and he took me backstage and kind of motioned to me to come over to the side. He said, I'm going to introduce you. Now, what record label do you record for? And I said, Decca Records. He said, what label? Because it was kind of noisy back there. And I said, Decca Records. And at the time, that was the label that he was recording for.
Yeah.
And so I said Decca about the third time, and he said, I never heard of it. And then he walked up to the microphone. He said, here's a young man that records for Jacob Records. Where he got Jacob out of Decca, I'll never know.
Wow. Now, Bill, you're not just known as an award-winning and multi-hit-making singer. You're known as, I guess, probably the most recorded songwriter in country music history, possibly music history. And so I was wondering, could you please tell us some of the artists other than Ray Price who have recorded your songs? I know there's a huge list, but...
You know what, Paul? Every time I look at that list, I kind of have to pinch myself because it's not only people in country music, but people from all different fields of music. Almost everybody in country music at one time or another, I think, particularly of the artists of my generation, have recorded one or more of my songs. And then outside of country music, such diverse people as James Brown, Aretha Franklin, Lawrence Welk, Dean Martin, golly, so many different ones. But of course, I'm the proudest of the country records by people like Porter Wagner and Ray Price and Connie Smith and Gene Shepard and Charlie Louvin and people that have done so many of my songs over the years. And then in recent years, people like George Strait and Brad Paisley and Alison Krauss and Kenny Chesney. So it's been a lot of fun for me to kind of span the generations and still be trying to write some songs.
I think probably my favorite song that you've written, I mean, and it's really hard to pick favorites, but one of my favorites would have to be Once a Day, along with Face to the Wall, too, Connie Smith and Farron Young. And you actually discovered Connie Smith, didn't you?
Found Connie singing on a talent contest up in Ohio, and eventually talked her into coming to Nashville, and helped her get a recording contract at RCA, and she's made me very proud for a long time.
And you mentioned that you hosted your own syndicated television program back in the day, but you've also hosted many other television programs and appeared on even more than that. ABC's TV's The Better Sex and TNN's Fandango, Opry Backstage. Do you have
I've done a lot of television work. I really have. I've decided in recent years that I look better on the radio than I do on TV.
You even appeared for 3 years on... the daytime soap opera on ABC, One Life to Live.
Yeah, I sure did, and enjoyed that very much. In fact, I just read last night, was very saddened where one of the guys that I worked with on there named Cliff Ritchie just passed away, I think yesterday or day before. So Cliff Ritchie, I'm sorry. And I had a wonderful time, made a lot of friends and new fans that didn't know me from country music that discovered me on the soap opera.